This week, members of more than 95 pro-family groups from across the globe will gather in Sydney, Australia for the 7th World Congress of Families. They will share information about the threats to families and plan policy and ministry initiatives. One of the most persistent problems is sex trafficking. More than 5.5 million children are victims of human trafficking today. The trafficking and sexual slavery of children has risen nearly 10% in the past 5 years. And every 5 seconds, another child becomes a victim.
Justin Murph is director of Set Free Now, a coalition of CBN ministries dedicated to fighting sex trafficking. Incidentally, he'll be attending the World Congress of Families in Australia, Sydney, Australia this week. Great to have you on the broadcast. Talk specifically about the impact that sex trafficking has on the strength, weakness of the family today.
Absolutely. Well, family is the nucleus of society. If we want a strong society, we have to have a strong family. And the threat of families today is human trafficking around the world. Sadly, in some third world countries, families are actually the instigator of child sex trafficking, selling children sometimes for a refrigerator, a television, or maybe even $60, say, in Bangladesh.
There is an initiative from the United Nations being pushed by the UN that would, in essence, lower the age of consent to 12 or 13 years old. That's unbelievable.
It is. There's a move, actually, George, what's happening now is the UN is saying that children should have more autonomy rights, including sexual autonomy, lowering the age of sexual consent to 12 or 13, which in essence would legalize child prostitution around the world, making them more of a target for pedophiles.
And you're going to the World Congress in Sydney, Australia. Again, I talked about the coalition of ministries at CBN, Regent University, Operation Blessing, Orphans Promise. What's your role at this Congress? And my understanding is that you're the only group talking about sex trafficking.
That's right. We're the only members of the World Congress of Family that's committed to talking about sex trafficking. The other thing that we're doing at the conference is hosting dinner, but also speaking on several different lectures about child sex trafficking in particular and its effect on the family, its effect on the economy. Sex trafficking is a $32 billion a year industry. And so it's big money, and it has a dramatic effect on the family.
And Set Free Now is focusing on Brazil specifically. Right. Obviously, the World Cup is coming there in a couple of years. Big event for Latin America. But why Brazil when it comes to the issue of sex trafficking?
Well, Brazil is unique in that there's actually a large number of children in Brazil. About 30% of all the victims of sex trafficking in Brazil are children. It's a regional problem, though. It's not just about Brazil. It's all the countries in Latin America that feed into Brazil. But think about it, George. In the next few years, they're going to host the World Cup and the Olympics. And so whatever we do now is really strategic from now until 2016. And so we're working with churches, partnering with organizations like Renas, Boa na Rede in Brazil to actually unite all of these organizations together to combat human trafficking.
Talk about that, Justin, because who has the answer? Is it these various NGOs which are doing great work? But I think you have the perspective that it is perhaps the church that responds to
really
this.
It is. The church has a mandate to care for the least of these, to care for the widow, the orphan, the downtrodden, and you know, Jesus had a deep affinity for children. And so in that same vein, the church really has a responsibility to step up. And what we're doing is saying, how can we come alongside you and help you? We're not trying to force anything on the churches, but the churches themselves are rising up. 400 different denominations and organizations in Brazil that are faith-based are already working to combat human trafficking. So we're just joining that effort and saying, how can we, through the power of media, social media, television, come alongside you and help.
And it's very encouraging that in the last few years you have seen the global church get involved in issues of justice, specifically with human trafficking, sex trafficking. Justice, it's just an incredible encouragement all around. Thank you, sir. Safe travels to you as you go to Sydney, Australia.
Thanks, George.
Okay. And to find out how you can join the Set Free Now campaign in the fight against sex trafficking, you can find a link to their ministry at our site, cbnnews.com.